Welcome to the First Case Expert series, where we are talking with Jeff Wertz, our perioperative instrument coordination expert. I'm your host, Melanie Perry, and in today's conversation, we are wrapping up our discussion on the different perspectives that are brought in when you are trying to build a business case. And in that final perspective, we are looking at supply chain. Jeff, what are we talking about today?
I'm going to start this conversation like we've started each one of these. This is a general scaffold or blueprint for you to have a couple topics that traditionally any supply chain executive is going to be interested in. But it is extremely important that you go and actually understand what is important to that individual and your facility, because that can impact where they're really focusing. So it may not even be on this list, but this should be the general direction of it. And the really 3 points to look for would be around your inventory optimization. It's obviously supply chain, so they're managing supplies and trying to understand where they're forecasting and the use of all those supplies are going. Vendor management and contract compliance, so understanding the relationship that they have with those vendors and in managing that inventory and helping them be more compliant in the utilization of that inventory. And then supply chain is going to be very interested in any automation or process standardization. So supply chain is obviously very process oriented and trying to make things as efficient as possible so that everything runs smoothly. They want to plan ahead, understanding the automation side and how that is going to help moving forward. Kind of kick it back to you here, Mel. Like, what are some initiatives that you've worked with supply chain on?
So one of the big ones actually that I worked with them on had to do with custom packs and optimizing our packs for surgical cases, because pulling items individually and having all of the stock on the shelf and the cost for that, and once again referencing back to those indirect costs of how much time does it take to pull a case and then to put all this stuff back, and how does that staff member pulled out of you know doing cases to go put supplies away or to pull them then affect things too. But we could work and put actually all of our supplies, or the majority of the supplies, based on our preference cards, again referencing preference cards, but looking at those things, having these custom packs so that that we could more efficiently pull our cases. Our packs would have like 90% of what we needed in them, which would then reduce the other items that we had on the shelf. We didn't have to have as much, just for one-offs and extras. But then obviously it introduced other issues with making sure we had storage space for these new packs. But ultimately the benefits of efficiency, kind of even looking a little bit almost like automation, in the sense that we could just pull this pack for the case and off we would go. Different things that we worked together, and it actually made a big improvement in our operational efficiency because of the time that we no longer had to spend pulling cases one piece at a time.
Yeah. Well, I think you just already hit back on what we've talked about on each one of these. Essentially, is having some of the data and materials to manage with measurement. So being able to go in and see what the impact of what this initiative or solution is going to be able to provide. Um, you know, just like you discussed from a pack perspective, visibility is a big component that supply chain is constantly looking for to be able to better forecast and be able to prevent issues from coming up or get rid of overstock of things that didn't get utilized. So being able to illustrate and communicate to them how it's going to give you any solution is going to give you more visibility is going to be of interest to them, and being able to get real-time information on a lot of areas within the perioperative department that they currently don't have insight to. So anything that's going to move in that direction, they're going to be very interested in and want to be learning more to improve their ability to forecast and be prepared. Moving on to the vendor management component. This one is, when I hear that, I obviously think of my old role as a device
Right.
rep from a vendor management standpoint. But it is more so than just the device reps that are coming into the OR. It's also the suppliers that are providing all of the dry goods and things like that. So understanding that impact on supply chain, and they are the ones that ultimately traditionally manage those contracts. And within those contracts, it's a lot of at what the price is paid for the actual device itself, from coming from a Stryker perspective. The cost of the implant was really all that's measured, but we all know that there's a whole lot more that goes into that, and it can be as simple as, are they providing, advance notice on the trays that are being brought in? Are they bringing in the right instrumentation? Are they bringing it in clean? I think that there's huge opportunity in the space to improve the visibility and communication between all of the vendors that are supporting the OR and supply chain, so that contracts can be something that's even more than just what the price is paid. It can also be the quality of the service that's being provided, much in the same way that you look at patient outcomes as what the cost of it is, as well as what the outcome has been. So there's more to it than just what the cost is. It's what value is being driven from that. And I think more and more, healthcare has to move in that direction, and the vendors have to be on board with that, and in wanting to illustrate the quality of the services that they're providing. So supply chain should be very interested in anything that you're bringing to the table that can provide more of that compliance and visibility into what those interactions look like, because that just makes their ability to negotiate and manage and work with those vendors more amenable for both sides. And then getting into I think this one's the obvious one, but it's really automation and process standardization. I think anytime that you have an initiative that's going to be driving that, that's where that's going to be providing any of those standardization or process improvements. Supply chain is a great partner to involve in that, because they're looking for more standardization throughout the entire process. That again only makes their job easier when you have something like surgeon preferences, which I think we have to go back to at least once every one of these episodes that we do. But the more reliable the information and the more reliable that process becomes, the easier it is for supply chain to successfully support all the procedures going through the department. So anytime that you're bringing these solutions in, being able to show how it is repeatable, how it scales within the organization, much in the same way that we discussed with each of the other stakeholders that you're going to be working with, is going to help their job be easier as well. So, I think all of these kind of go back to that same discussion of how are you measuring that impact at a local level, at an individual level, and how are you also conveying that to leadership and all these other departments to be able to provide better insight, better forecasting, being more prepared and less reactive. And all of these should move in that direction. But for supply chain, that's especially important because they're making forecasting decisions and purchase decisions based on the level of information that you're providing. So if you can show them how that data point or this process is making things more replicable, that's going to be something that they're going to be very interested in.
I agree. And going back to each of these, but I think especially with supply chain, if you understand their pain points and your technology or solution or thing that you're bringing in is actually going to alleviate one of those pain points and make an improvement, not only for your department, but also for them, pretty sure you're going to get a lot more buy-in if suddenly it's also providing a great benefit for them as well. But it goes back to understanding who you're talking to, knowing their pain points, knowing their issues, so that then I can say, hey, I want this, but look what it's going to do for you too. And then it makes for easier conversations, right?
Has to be a mutually beneficial goal that you're working towards. And I think that there's oftentimes maybe more friction than necessary between the supply chain and the operating room, because you're going from one reactive environment to a more proactive environment. And anything that you can do to help build a bridge between those two should be something that everyone is on board with, because that ends up being better for everyone. The more that you have things planned out in advance and checklists and better processes in place, supply chain should be a big advocate of that and help support however they can. And not to go back to it too much, but I think the vendor management component is an area of particular importance that really aligns everyone. You're dealing with the supplies, you're dealing with the patient in the clinical environment, and there's an opportunity there to improve a lot of efficiencies between the reps manufacturer and supply chain at your hospital, all of the above. So tremendous opportunity on that. I think that there's, I've seen a lot of different hospitals involve supply chain more and more in that clinical process. And I think it can be challenging early on, but I think in the long term, that's going to be what's definitely necessary to improve the quality of replicable care.
Excellent insight again, as always. I think over the last 4 episodes, we've looked at those different stakeholder perspectives and really identified how we can communicate our needs in a way that the person listening is going to connect with and also understand, so that we can tell our stories with data, with numbers, by addressing their pain points, things that are going to maybe be mutually beneficial. But all of those things add up to helping us present the best business case that we can to those stakeholders, so that we can then implement something new to improve our efficiency, improve patient safety, all of those things that we are all have those goals to do every single time that we are looking to implement something new. So, Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned. Our next interview is our last episode of this series. I'm excited to wrap this up and have kind of a final conversation with Jeff and put a bow on everything that we've talked about. So, stay tuned. And thanks for watching this episode of the First Case Expert series.